All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize our partnership that you see with us, Governor Moore, Congressman Mfume, State's Attorney Bates, U.S. Attorney Barron, DEA Special Agent in Charge, Jarod Forget, our ATF Special Agent in Charge, Toni Crosby, Director Mavronis, Commissioner Worley, Richard Alban, Assistant Director of Public Safety Strategy in the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, Jeff Beeson, the Executive Director of Washington, Baltimore High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, also known as HIDTA. Today, we are gathered here to announce a takedown of 4 separate criminal organizations operating across Southwest Baltimore, resulting directly from the city's group violence reduction strategy, investigation efforts, and Operation Tornado Alley. In a moment, I'll turn it over to the governor, the state's attorney, and U.S. attorney, and our wonderful federal law enforcement partners, and allow them to go into the details of this case. But first, I want to take a moment to thank them and their teams for their work and speak about the importance of the continued work of GVRS. I want to thank the state's attorney, the U.S. attorney, the governor, GOCCP, the federal partners at ATF, DEA, and BPD's group violence unit. Thank you very much, everybody, for the work. Anne Arundel County Police, Baltimore County Police, and our team at Muncie for doing the investigative and enforcement work necessary to make these violent organizations come to this point. All of the partners you see before you represent the level of intense and close collaboration required to remove violent social networks involving over 30 individuals responsible for drug trafficking, possessing illegal firearms, and driving violence in our communities off of the streets. This is what GVRS's accountability component looks like, working together, sharing intelligence, embedding prosecutors into law enforcement investigation, and leveraging our collective resources to hold those who violate the strategy's mandate to put down the guns and make decisions to perpetuate harm and violence in our communities accountable. Both the enforcement and the intervention components are equally important. We want Baltimoreans to remain safe, alive, and free. And at every available opportunity, we provide pathways for those at the highest risk of being involved in violence to step away from the life. But again, we will not tolerate violence or behaviors that lend themselves to future violence, like drug trafficking and carrying illegal guns. And through GVRS in this strategy, we will hold those individuals in that activity accountable in every way. Together, we are sending and sharing a unified message that if you make the choice to engage in these activities associated with crime and violence, there will be swift and certain consequences for your actions. This collaboration is a huge part of why we've been able to drive down violence in Baltimore. As of this morning, as you know, homicides are down 23% and non-fatal shootings are down 34% this calendar year. That is on top of last year's historic 20% reduction in homicides. We're doubling down on the approaches which have clearly been proven to work. That's why you see representatives from every level of government involved in this work represented here today. I again want to thank all of our partners who have joined us here today, as well as our community-based organizations who are critical in the work to intervene with those at risk and being involved in violence, for their shared commitment to making Baltimore a safer place. Through GVRS and beyond, we are demonstrating what effective coordination looks like around public safety. We are seeing the fruits of our labor, but there is so much more work that remains to do. And we must recommit ourselves to continuing this progress in this way of true partnership through 2025 and beyond. And I also like to take a moment to thank all of our detectives, everyone who's on the front line doing this work every day. We are up here doing the speaking, but you do the work. So thank you all for what you do for Baltimore each and every day. And thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to Governor Moore.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon. I want to, in addition to thanking the mayor for not just the relentless focus on this issue, but also the leadership that you and the city have continued to show. And also I want to echo what the mayor was saying to our frontline officers, to members of law enforcement, Thank you for being willing to be the ones who raise your hands to continue to make our community safer. Our administration has been clear from day one that public safety was our top priority. But we knew what we were walking into. We knew we were walking into a situation where just in Baltimore City, that Baltimore City had endured nearly a decade of 300 plus homicides a year, that we were failing to adequately coordinate the different arms of the justice system. And there were real gaps in the system. Gaps like, for example, in the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center, the governor's main tool that you have for intelligence, not just collection, but also sharing, that all jurisdictions were involved in MCAC, with the exception of Baltimore City. So in our first year, we decided to roll out an all-of-the-above approach to public safety. And we said we were not going to pick and choose which jurisdictions in local and state and federal levels were going to have a seat at the table, and we weren't going to settle for a status quo. And we would actively work with all of our partners and stakeholders to improve communication and also improve coordination. And we said that we provide the members of law enforcement with the resources that they need in order to get the job done and also to stay safe. And so we delivered record funding support for local law enforcement. We delivered record funding support for the Maryland Coordination and Analysis Center. And Maryland is proudly one of the only states in the country that provides direct support to the Office of the U.S. Attorney, so they have the dedicated resources that they need as well. So in Maryland, we've chosen to work together. And I believe that today is a testament to the results that we can deliver when we make the active choice to move in partnership. In front of you, you see guns and contraband from 3 different drug busts of a crime ring that touched nearly every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland. The actions that we've taken make Maryland safer, from Western Mountains to the Eastern Shore and Baltimore City and everywhere in between. And we could not have done this work without the people to my left and my right and in front of me. So I want to thank everyone who was a part of the Maryland Criminal Intelligence Network, because they were the tip of the spear of this operation. I want to thank all of our federal partners and the remarkable work our federal partners are doing, to include U.S. Attorney Barron, Congressman Kweisi Mfume, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. I want to thank our partners in the city of Baltimore, Mayor Scott, Commissioner Worley, State's Attorney Ivan Bates. And I want to thank our state leaders who have stepped up as well, the Maryland State Police, the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. Because together, we are writing a new chapter in this story of public safety. We're in our first year, despite watching the track record we saw before. In our first year, we broke the back of 300 plus homicides every year in Baltimore City. And in our second year, we are on track now, working in partnership to break the back of 200 homicides in Baltimore City. Baltimore City is seeing one of the most precipitous drops in violent crime of any city in the country right now. And it doesn't happen by accident. It happens because we're moving together and we're moving in partnership. And while we're very clear, this work is not over. And I want to be very clear to everybody who wishes to do harm to people in this state, that this collaboration, this partnership, it will not stop, and your day is coming. We will continue to stay coordinated. We'll continue to stay vigilant. We'll continue to work in partnership with the people in this room and with the people in our communities. And with that, I am proud to introduce a true friend and partner in this work, Baltimorean and Congressman Kweisi Mfume.
Thank you very much. I am just happy to be able to stand here this morning with all of these people, not the least of which is the mayor of the city, who has done a yeoman's job at fighting crime wherever it exists, and who has repeatedly, over and over again, suggested and in fact demanded that people believe that crime can in fact and will be reduced. So, Mayor Scott, thank you for that. Thank you for the work with all of your agencies and every aspect of city government. Governor Moore said something a moment ago that should not be lost, and that is that anybody out there being a part of violent gang activity, where there's guns or drugs or anything else, will have no safe haven. And the governor, since he's been in office, has been consistent in that regard. And when he and both the mayor talk about the nameless and faceless, as we know, those are the people on the street, the detectives that work hard, the people who work here in this headquarters, and the others that don't get any sort of recognition at all, but in the aggregate have all worked together to get us to this point. I would be remiss if I did not mention the work of our state's attorney, Ivan Bates. Consistent, day after day, week after week, against great odds, working in tandem with so many around this room to get us to where we are. Ivan, it's been a great job. You please keep up the good work. And I can tell you on behalf of families all over Baltimore, they appreciate the consistency in your example. And part of that consistency has been his dedication, willingness, and commitment to work with our U.S. Attorney Erek Barron, who has singularly fought over and over again at levels of government that we don't see and we don't know, to make sure that efforts like this take place, to make sure that they're coordinated, to make sure that the Office of the U.S. Attorney is doing everything it can to get us to where we ought to be. Those things are important to say today, just because this is the record and we want to be on the record. And being on the record, thank you, Mr. Forget, for the work at DEA. Thank you, Ms. Crosby, for the work at ATF. Thank you to our friends at the FBI and all of those on the street. One final thing I just want to emphasize here. Families have been devastated by this level of organized crime. The organizations that are being taken down today, if left unchecked, would have engaged in more murders and more drugs and more disarray in this city. We can't stress enough to the families who are not here, who've buried loved ones. You've had to sit at a table where someone no longer sits in your family again. You had a son or daughter in the wrong place at the wrong time. We feel your hurt. We feel your pain. And as it gets closer and closer to the holidays, understand that efforts like this are to prevent other families from having to suffer through the tragedy that you've endured so long. So I just cannot say enough about how great it is to make sure that our federal partners, all of us on the congressional level, and we work as a team, both on the House and Senate side, continue to fight for funding for federal agencies to be able to be a part of something like this. And so allow me to bring forward our state's attorney, who has been singularly unique in his desire to make sure that every day and in every way, things like this take place, and that all you see before us are the things that could have been on the streets of Baltimore. And the money that was received and the fentanyl and all the other drugs are drugs that will not get to young people. So please welcome our state's attorney, the quarterback, Ivan Bates.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Mfume, for that kind introduction and your continued support, not only through your office, but through your significant service in Congress to all of us in Baltimore. Dismantling 4 criminal organizations and holding 40 individuals accountable for alleged acts of criminal activity that perpetrated violence in our city would not be possible without every leader and organization that you see present today. I want to acknowledge and thank all of our partners for their outstanding work, but I want to especially talk about a couple of individuals. First, I want to start with 2 of my amazing prosecutors who are up here. First of us, the MIU Deputy Chief ASA Laura Ruppersberger, as well as ASA Megan Green. Without the hard work of these young ladies who worked hour after hour for the past 6, 7, 8 months, writing more warrants, looking at every single thing, that we would not be here. I also want to take the time to thank their chief, Sam Mildesberg, as well as my deputy, Tom Donnelly. But I really want to also take the opportunity to thank to these young men sitting in front of me. These are officers you wouldn't see. The time period that they watched, listened to the wires for months, they looked, they gave up their time from their family. They sacrificed. Between the work of these officers and my team, as well as everybody else, including GVRS, everybody, this has been very successful. Now, I know I talked about on January 3rd to bring your toothbrush, so since you don't have it, I brought it for you today. So what I'm going to say is that we all together want to ensure that the 38 individuals that we've indicted know that their toothbrush will be waiting for them. This is an investigation that began as a local GVRS initiative and detectives seeking to identify suspects connected to violence. After collaborating with my prosecutors and the team, we were able to make sure that we needed to increase the surveillance. See, the detectives recognized that there was something more here that they could do, and we could take it to another level. During that, they realized, and the capacity that was needed to do this was something that we needed to make sure how we could do it and take this to another level. We first went over, and my team first went to the U.S. Attorney's Office and asked for that support. However, they weren't necessarily seeing it from that vantage point. And I understand. Our office, meaning the State's Attorney's Office, didn't have the greatest track record doing this. We had not done this type of work in a while. That's when I went and talked to my good friend and colleague, U.S. Attorney Erek Barron. Mr. Barron and I sat down and we talked, and we walked over there physically to where these officers were. And we walked and talked to the federal partners one by one. I see Brian Crow standing there in front of us today. Brian Crow, the DAA, said, you know what, we believe the work that everybody will do. We've seen what GVRS will do. We've seen what the detectives will do, and we'll go ahead and support this. And they supported it. Over the course of the next 6 months, this investigation uncovered 4 separately operating criminal organizations whose primary enterprise was trafficking narcotics and also perpetrating violence. These various targets were watched under surveillance for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Normally, we might not get the larger individuals. We'd only get the corner boys. However, having this wire allowed us to look at other significant members of the organizations. We followed multiple targets, obtaining evidence to support wiretaps for every criminal enterprise that was identified, and we were able to connect how each of them was related to one another. We identified targets who planned to impact violence on a mass level. But as a result of proactive investigation, numerous violent incidents were prevented. For instance, these officers and the team, they prevented an armed robbery. There was also another incident where investigators learned of a turf war that was about to play out in the neighborhood streets. This would have been the same thing we were afraid of, seeing the same thing that happened in Brooklyn, happening here on the streets of Baltimore. These officers were able to step in and stop those individuals before this ever happened. So the residents and the citizens of Baltimore City didn't have to understand another incident of senseless violence. We also were able to realize that one of the potential defendants had a hit on them, and they were able to go ahead and save that individual's life without them even realizing what was about to happen to them. Dismantling these operations marks a significant step forward in our mission to protect our communities from the dangers of illegal drugs and violence. Because we are not only disrupting the sale of illegal and lethal narcotics, but also mitigating potential murders. We know that drug trafficking goes hand in hand with our homicides and our non-fatal shootings. The guns we received and the members that have been removed. For instance, 12 individuals and defendants were charged and operating the 1700 block 11th Street. 3 defendants were operating the 2000 block of West Pratt Street. 12 defendants were operating the 500 block of Millington Avenue, and 4 defendants were operating the 2800 block of Edmondson Avenue. Ongoing violence in these areas was a catalyst for this investigation. Law enforcement identified multiple sources of fentanyl and cocaine, some of which included import in large quantities out of state, including 3.4 kilograms of suspected cocaine that was being brought from New York into Maryland on behalf of the criminal organization from the 500 block of Millington Avenue. This criminal organization maintained caches of firearms, some of which are in front of us today, to protect their supply of narcotics and secure their territory. In March, BPD executed search warrants in the 500 blocks of Millington Avenue, which resulted in the seizure of 5 rifles, 3 handguns, and body armor. A rival organization operating in the 1700 block Lemon Street engaged in drug trafficking, firearm trafficking, and car thefts to finance and further their enterprise. On November 19th at 3 a.m., it was my honor to stand with the commissioner as well as U.S. Attorney to address many of the men and women that executed a number of search and seizure warrants throughout the state of Maryland. It was cold, it was dark, they were there and they knocked on doors. They did their job, and not one incident happened from the professionalism of the Baltimore City Police Department and some of these other organizations where the DEA, the ATF, FBI, the Maryland State Police, the Baltimore County Police Department, the Howard County Police Department, the Harford County Police Department, the Baltimore City Fire Department, and the Baltimore City Health Department and Animal Control, as well as the members of GVRS, some of which I've seen here today. I want to say thank you for your professionalism when we work together. In total, law enforcement recovered just that day 525 grams of suspected heroin fentanyl mixture, approximately 340 grams of suspected cocaine, 6 firearms varying caliber, and $9,701 believed to be proceeds of sale of narcotics. Just to be explicitly clear, this investigation is ongoing. We are looking to see if any of these suspects are tied in the past to additional acts of violence in our city or our state. I hope that the gravity of today's announcement is evident to everyone. What this collaboration has done not only restores some measure of peace and safety to the citizens and residents of Southwest and Western Baltimore City, but also delivers a devastating blow to the I-95 drug corridor in terms of drug trade. My office is committed to continuing to upend the lives of individuals who think Baltimore is a safe place for them to traffic guns, drugs, and participate in violence in our community. We are coming after these individuals who think that they can do that. And with the stellar team of law enforcement that you see right here with us on the state and federal side, we are clearly letting you know that we are confident what we're able to do. Thank you, and right now I will turn this over to my colleague and partner, Erek Barron. And once again, I must say truly thank you to him, because we would never have been able to have this wire without our U.S. Attorney stepping in and asking on his behalf and believing in both GVRS, the Baltimore City Police Department, and the state's attorney's office to say we can do this together. Once again, my friend and colleague, Erek Barron.
Good afternoon, and it is a good afternoon. First, I want to also thank our various partners this afternoon for your commitment and hard work. You know, the first time we had a show of force like this was back in August of 2022. We met at, Tillman School Community Park that afternoon, and the results since then speak for themselves. Again, my name is Erek Barron, and I am your United States Attorney. I came into this position with a simple premise. When the feds step down from the ivory tower, we are at our best. To that end, the United States Attorney's Office has its feet on the ground. We're getting our nails dirty, and we're taking a down-to-earth approach to leadership. We have a leadership role in team building and problem solving with all of our partners. Like a championship caliber team, everyone must be on board, from the front office to the coaches, to the players, to the training staff, and even the fans. Each group needs the others to be successful. Operation Tornado Alley is just the latest example of the impactful work that the city state's attorney's office and the Baltimore Police Department can accomplish when the feds take a leadership role and provide the teamwork, the tools, and the resources that they need. This investigation never gets off the ground with a wire without State's Attorney Ivan Bates. He contacted me for help, and we went to work. We huddled up and activated the game plan. To my federal, state, and local law enforcement partners, and my community-based partners, Your problem is my problem. Many thanks to the Baltimore OCDF Strike Force, my colleagues at the Strike Force for their support, including the DEA, the ATF, and the FBI, all of whom provided valuable assistance. We're taking our violent crime approach and strategy to the next level. So pack an extra toothbrush. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Jarod Forget from the Drug Enforcement Administration, and good afternoon. The threat to U.S. national security posed by illicit drugs extends beyond traditional challenges and directly impacts the safety and health of communities spanning the country, including neighborhoods here in the city of Baltimore. We are battling an unprecedented drug poisoning epidemic that has claimed thousands of American lives, and I'm talking about the fentanyl crisis. In fact, 2/3 of the reported drug poisoning fatalities are linked to synthetic drugs, such as methamphetamine and fentanyl, and are primarily manufactured by two drug trafficking organizations, the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels in Mexico. To maximize profit, criminal networks use a multi-drug approach by lacing their products, like cocaine, meth, and heroin, with fentanyl, which is cheap to produce, lucrative for the criminal networks, and extremely dangerous for the American public. During the course of this nearly year-long investigation, law enforcement recovered over 7 kilograms of cocaine, 3 kilograms of fentanyl heroin mixture, 110 pounds of cannabis, and nearly $400,000 in cash, believed to be derived from the sale of narcotics. The individuals charged in this operation employed violence and intimidation as tactics to advance their drug trafficking activities across the city of Baltimore and beyond. Their actions not only endangered the lives of countless residents, but also contributed to destabilization of communities already grappling with numerous challenges. Echoing the words of my colleagues, collectively, we work tirelessly to safeguard the American public by carrying out daily investigations, such as Operation Tornado Alley. The efforts outlined today, encompassing data mining and analytics, tactical operations, and prosecutorial efforts, illustrate our collective commitment to systematically dismantling street gangs and their criminal networks that contribute to drug poisonings and violent crime in our communities. I'm privileged to work with an exceptional group of men and women devoted to keeping our communities safe. Together, we are sending a powerful and direct message to drug trafficking organizations, their leaders, and those who enable their illegal activities that we will not tolerate these actions, and we are committed to relentlessly pursuing justice against them. Now I'd like to pass the mic to ATF SAC Toni Crosby.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor, Governor, Congressman, U.S. Attorney, State's Attorney, DEA, Baltimore Police Department. We're here today to announce charges against 40 individuals for drug trafficking and firearms offenses that occurred over the last year in Baltimore. As you know, ATF is on the front line in the fight against violent crime, particularly firearms trafficking, illegal possession of firearms, and possession of machine gun conversion devices, known as switches, especially when such possession is in conjunction with drug trafficking. ATF uses crime gun intelligence, which is a focused concept that consistently produces timely, precise, and actionable intelligence concerning firearms-related events. This information assists investigators in connecting, identifying, and disrupting violence through evidence-based methods. Its aim is to disrupt cycles of violence by identifying and prosecuting trigger pullers and their sources of crime guns. This case is no exception. The guns recovered during this case linked approximately 47 different incidents. These incidents that we will continue to solve and find those responsible for. So far, 13 individuals have been charged with firearms-related crimes. This investigation will be ongoing until each and every individual who possessed, trafficked, or used firearms illegally is brought to justice. Of particular concern in this case is the possession and use of machine gun conversion devices. Conversion devices can convert semi-automatic pistols and rifles into fully automatic weapons in less than 60 seconds. One pull of the trigger can release all the ammunition in the magazine. Protecting the public is our number one priority, and these devices pose a massive threat to public safety. It is against the law to manufacture, sell, or possess these devices. We are committed to apprehending and prosecuting those who continue to bring these devices into our communities. Thank you, State's Attorney Bates and U.S. Attorney Barron. Your relentless commitment to ensure that these cases are prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law in order to keep our communities safe from gun violence. I will now turn the podium over to Stefanie Mavronis, Director of Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Thank you.
Thank you, Special Agent in Charge Crosby. GVRS is a core component of Baltimore's, here, let me fix this. Apologies all, I'm short up at the podium. I think it's just falling over.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Thank you. GVRS is a core component of Baltimore's targeted violence intervention approach, one that focuses on accountability and strong partnerships with law enforcement, as you've heard here today. Monty plays a role in the group violence reduction strategy as a coordinator, participating in the weekly violence review, facilitating coordination meetings with our service providers, and helping manage the partnership that includes BPD, the state's attorney's office, and a whole host of community-based partners. We also serve as an interagency accountability partner, participating in the data tracking and accountability associated with the strategy. We want to make sure that we are maintaining fidelity of this strategy while also being able to pivot to meet needs where needed. The mayor has always been clear that we'll be guided by the data. And as the mayor and the other partners here today mentioned, this strategy is fundamentally about coordination and collaboration. Again, I want to thank State's Attorney Bates, U.S. Attorney Barron, the ATF, DEA, BPD, and our other law enforcement partners for ensuring the strategy's accountability component is effective. GVRS is ultimately an intervention strategy. People get on the radar of GVRS because they're identified as the most likely to be at the center of gun violence. We don't want to just deploy enforcement after a shooting has taken place. We know the connection between the drug trade carrying illegal firearms and violent crime. There have to be real, legitimate consequences for those who perpetuate harm in our communities. We'll continue to work hand in hand with our partners to build safer communities across Baltimore, and we know this approach is working, and we remain committed to the strategy in collaboration with these partners here today. This strategy relies on a balance of accountability and opportunity through service providers where appropriate. As of November 18th, since GVRS has launched in January of 2022, we've conducted approximately 500 direct communications where our team and community moral voice partners share the strategy's mandate to put down the guns and step away from the life and take us up on our offer of services. We've had 193 people enroll in these life-changing services with very great success. Almost 94% of our participants have a success rate, not recidivating and not being re-victimized. However, today is about the promise we're making. When folks are found to be harming our communities, engaging in behaviors that put themselves and others at risk, we have to hold them accountable. There have been 340 arrests, including 265 made by BPD's Group Violence Unit. Following this takedown, the mayor's office will be mobilizing an intensive stabilization to deploy city resources, maintain a presence, so that other groups do not try to fill the vacuum left by this significant takedown today. We'll be addressing environmental factors conducive to public safety as well. And we'll be meeting with community members to assess how we will set up and drive that work. Thank you, and with that, I will pass it to my partner, Commissioner Worley.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Stefanie. I just want to thank all of our federal, state, and local partners. Without them, we wouldn't be here with this magnitude of an investigation. But all investigations have a starting point, and that was with our group violence unit. They started this as an investigation into a violent gang that was
wreaking havoc in the Tri-District area. It quickly grew to where this involved all of our state, federal, and local partners, but it also involved all of our DAT teams, our patrol officers, our crime lab. None of this stuff gets processed without the crime lab and all the analysts that it took. So it was truly a team effort, and I'm incredibly proud of all of them, led by Lieutenant Colonel Velty and Captain Latanzi of the Group Violence Unit. It's part of the group violence reduction strategy that is working to drive down violence in the city. The amount of guns and drugs that you've seen seized here is just from 4 groups, and there are multiples violating the law around the city. The individuals involved in this investigation range from the age of 16 to 61. They've been arrested more than 220 times, and 12 of them are repeat offenders. Luckily, we've got almost all of them off the street. 15 of them are still at large. So if you have any information, please call 1-866-7-LOCK-UP. But one of the big components of this that I don't think we've mentioned so far is the community that gives us tips, that allows us to do these investigations, that we can continue to build on when we get a roadblock. They're helping with these investigations. So the community plays a huge part. So for this, I thank you, all those watching. Thank you for your cooperation. Our men and women could not be able to do it. We wouldn't be here without the cooperation of the community. Now we will turn it over for questions.
All right, we'll take questions over here. We're going to do 2 questions per outlet, only on-topic questions, no off-topic questions. So if you have a question in reference to this investigation, please come introduce yourself, your outlet, and you can come ask the question.
Good morning. I'm Stefan Dingle with WJZ. You guys talked about how it took this effort to come together. It took Mr. Bates going to talk to Mr. Barron. Is this set a precedent moving forward of how to tackle other parts of the city where this is a problem?
Good question. You know, we do this continuously, talk all the time. You know, one of the things that people don't realize, we receive funding and money from the governor with GOCCP. But there's only so much we can do. You know, one of the things also is we had to build out our office. You know, my prosecutors, you see, they were in other agencies that came back. So you have to have that level of expertise. And so then understanding that, then you also have to have the relationships to be able to go on the federal side. You know, I've been pretty blessed. I'm on HIDTA's board, actually I'm the chair. So then you talk about Jeff Beeson, so we're able to work with Jeff. And so then you also have to understand the relationship with the Congressman Mfume, because you understand what Congress can do and try to fund what organizations, so OSADEF would have the money. So it's all of us working together, constantly talking. You know, we sit and meet with BPD's executive team to have these types of discussions. My MIU team works very closely with the GVRU officers. So it's constantly talking. I think what we were able to bring is that connection that was missing somewhat from the state and from the federal. And I, in my position as the state's attorney for Baltimore City, also the relationship without a doubt with the U.S. attorney and understanding that process. But for us, yes, we want to continue. Our hope is to definitely continue these types of investigations, and not even our hope, we will be continuing it. And I will say this is, the more people we can hire in the state's attorney's office of Baltimore City with experience, and we are hiring, we are here to make sure we do these as often as possible.
Thank you.
Hello. Mr. State's Attorney, Mackenzie Frost from Fox 45. Just so for clarity's sake, I know that this all stemmed from a GVRS investigation, but was all of this a GVRS takedown specifically?
I wouldn't describe it as, I would say it was a state and federal takedown, where you definitely had the state organizations, this, you know, state's attorney's office, as well as the Baltimore City Police Department, but you also have ATF, DEA, FBI. They're not part of GVRS. That's why I would say you have the state and federal takedown. But without a doubt, I think it's the hard work of the men and women, GVRS, as well as the officers that you see sitting here in front that did the initial groundwork. But it was a state and federal takedown on a larger scale than I think we'd probably seen in I don't know how long in terms of Baltimore City.
And then I have a question for the police commissioner, if I can. Does BPD have the resources working with GVRS to complete a takedown at this level? And without the wiretap, what would the investigation have led to?
Obviously, we don't. That's why we have all these other people here. With the way it started is our GVU unit were investigating one drug trafficking organization in the Tri-District area. The more wires they got signed on from the state's attorney grew bigger and bigger, and they reached out for help from the federal government. They provided the overtime and some resources, but it was those officers all working together on the ground to build this, and it just kept getting bigger. And that's what you see here. Not only the raids that we did last week at 4 in the morning, which we hit 15 houses at 4 in the morning, but all during the wire, they were picking things up that we had to take criminals off the street because they were going to do violence to someone else. So that's why I said they coordinated with our officers that are out in the street and patrol, our DAT teams, our detective units, all of them. We even had to call in our crime lab to analyze a gun one night overnight to see if we could get something to take someone else off the street. So it was truly a collaborative effort for everyone.
Barry Sims, WBAL TV, Channel 11. One of the slides that came up talked about additional indicted individuals. It didn't talk about exactly what they were indicted for, and just trying to find out, were they working with any of the groups? What were they charged with other things? If anyone can, it just said additional indicted individuals. It's in the press. Okay, all right.
You know, we indicted a number of individuals for a number of things, for anywhere from violent crimes to firearm to drugs to, you know, within the organization, gun possession, handgun drug trafficking, and then drug possessions as well. Anywhere from smaller amounts to see some weight counts. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the U.S. Attorney's Office indicted 2 have been taken federally as well. And so, you know, what I also will say is we will keep going. Do not think that this is the end in terms of the potential charges in this case. We will continue to gather information, and the more information we gather, the more individuals will continue to be indicted with additional charges.
And I guess for the commissioner, please. The 4 locations that were mentioned, Pratt Street, Lemon Street, Edmondson Avenue, and Millington Avenue, these were long-time or long-term areas where there had been a lot of violent crime and also drugs, correct?
Yes, it used to be called the Tri-District area because it intersected the Southwest, the Southern, and the Western, but now the Southwest gets to take it all. So it's now just in the Southwest, one of the drug areas.
And my question is, have you or the mayor had a chance to talk to any of the people who live in those areas since the takedown, and what are they saying now?
We haven't had much of a chance because we didn't want to spoil what we were putting out here today. But there will be they will see a big impact because the hard part is over now. Now the harder part starts by keeping those areas drug-free, and that's where the group violence reduction strategy comes in, along with our federal, state, and local partners to offer all the services that are needed to those people who haven't been indicted and who haven't been affected by this, other than disrupt their neighborhood, now to give them their neighborhood back and keep it.
Okay, thanks.
And I just wanted to follow up on that. That was my next question. I believe Stefanie Mavronis talked about how the group plans to go in to keep these places where they are now in the celebration of this day. What does that look like in more tangible terms for residents who, as we know in the culture of no snitching and being quiet, how do we continue to incentivize them and also keep the criminals out of the way?
Well, I think that, thank you for the question. I think that this isn't, first we say we're not celebrating. We're recognizing progress and understanding that we have a lot more work to do. Stefan, but when you think about a neighborhood like this, and you grew up here, so you experienced, I know where you grew up. When you come in historically, when one of these would happen, the first people to come after would be the people replacing them, the next drug organization, right? And what we all working together is to make sure that that doesn't happen. So getting everybody, and there's no cookie cutter, right? You're talking about going out, and Monsi and their team going out, talking to individual residents, everyone in that neighborhood that they can literally have talked to them and seeing what they need. For some people, it might need some job training. Someone might need to go back to school to get their GED. Someone might be suffering from substance abuse, and they might need services on that. Whatever they need is what we're going to try to provide to make sure that there's not a backflow or in the power vacuum.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Worthington from WMAR. This is probably for the state's attorney. Can you just give us a little bit more color for the wiretap process, how it worked, and all the hours and manpower that was involved with that?
Well, there are about 155 separate warrants or motions or affidavits that were written. I think my prosecutors probably have carpal tunnel syndrome, as well as many of the officers. So what happens is the officers go ahead and they develop the probable cause. They were doing that over months. They make an arrest, and from there they do the groundwork, the hard work. You sit down with our prosecutors. Our prosecutors sit down and talk about who are the individuals, do we have the probable cause. In developing the probable cause, they also look and put things from a historical perspective, as well as what's going on within that community, but also looking at the day-to-day operations of that organization. Once we had that there, we then decided, and they pitched it to me to say, hey, we'd like to try to have a wire. At that moment in time, I sat down, I looked at everything. They went back and added a couple things here, a couple things there. Then we sat down, they applied to say, hey, we'd like to try to have a wire. Other individuals on the federal side first said no, because I think, and I already told you what my process is with that. However, the bigger thing was that eventually when they said no, we sat down and reached out to the U.S. Attorney Erek Barron. When I reached out to the U.S. Attorney Erek Barron, I sat down, gave him an email kind of detailing everything, and then we reached out, and him and I walked over together to where a number of these federal agencies are. We sat down, and he did the talking, I did the listening, and he talked to his federal partners. And talking to the federal partners, they believed this was something that we could do and we could happen. At that moment in time, we maneuvered, did what we needed to do. We filed our affidavit with the court. When you file the affidavit with the court, it is given to a judge. And what I would say is every month we have to sit down and speak with that judge to find out how the wiretap is going and are we making progress. That's to ensure that we just don't have a wiretapper listening to individuals' phone calls and doing nothing and there's no progress happening. And this happened on for the next 6 months. Didn't matter if people were on vacation, if they were getting married, on their honeymoons, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it happened. 6 separate lines. The amount of dedication, because it's not just the wire, they also have to look at all the text messages, all the phone calls, but the officers are also going to have boots on the ground to make sure their eyes are seeing is what's happening, what they're saying. But they're also finding out individuals, for instance, there's going to be a hit on an individual who you particularly think you're going to potentially arrest. So you got to find a reason to get that person off the streets to save their life, but to do it in a way that makes sense, and so without going on ahead and hurting the investigation. I cannot say enough about how impressed I have been with the officers sitting before us today, as well as my team. They did a phenomenal job, and to work collaboratively in the partnership. We never could have done this if we did not work together. Working together is the only reason you see the weapons. I think it was almost 65 weapons, 10, 12 kilos of different amounts, $300, almost $400,000 in cash. And so, now for us, the prosecutors, the hard work begins. Our prosecutors all of a sudden went from having 0 cases because they were new hire to 38 brand new cases for trial. So, and they will continue to grow. And that's kind of how the wire came about, what happened, and what we have to do every single month. But once again, it was truly an honor, and I learned so much from this experience.
Thank you. The 15 people who are still at large, is there any concern that they're now aware that you're looking for them?
Oh, they knew the night that they could get the doors in at 4 o'clock in the morning, they knew what was up. And so, I think that's fine, but it's one of them. We have a whole army of us. And so the same way we collaboratively work together, we collaboratively will find them. And you know what? If their relatives want to go ahead and hold on to them, we can go ahead and charge them with obstruction of justice too, and they can come on and join the party as well. So that's not what we want to do. We'd rather have these individuals turn themselves in. You will be entitled to your day of court, but we will be prepared to hold you accountable. And if we need to charge you for additional charges because you want to go ahead and not listen and you think you want to do what you want to do, the day is over. We're going to hold you accountable. We want you to turn yourself in peacefully so we can go ahead and start the process.
Welcome to do it now.
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Alex Mann with the Baltimore Sun. Mr. State's Attorney, you mentioned that there were some crimes of violence charged in this case. What were the crimes of violence charged in these cases?
As of now, and we still have some additional investigation, but as of now, it's a conspiracy to commit murder, armed robbery, and a conspiracy attempt to commit armed robbery. Those are the three that we have now. But let's just say we're moving the right direction on others. It just takes time to sit down and put all the pieces together. Sure. And that's what we'll be doing.
And then just one question for Special Agent in Charge Crosby. You mentioned that the weapons that were recovered in connection to this investigation were linked to 47 incidents. I just wondered if you could elaborate on what incidents means exactly, and then what the investigative process is like from here forward.
So I can't get into the specific incidents surrounding the 47. Again, as others have said here, those are incidents that we will be looking into. Those are actually have been linked through the NIBIN system, or the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network system, which we have previously spoken about. So we will look at each one of those individual crimes that has been linked through that system and make sure that investigatively we have not missed anything to be able to solve that crime, utilizing all of the intelligence surrounding each one of those individual incidents.
Without going into specifics about the incidents, though, we're talking about shootings, right? Some incident where a firearm was discharged?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.